It began on one of those calm Texas mornings that seemed too still to trust. The sky carried no blemish, just a wide blue stretch fading into the horizon. Mesquite trees rustled faintly behind the fence, and the air had that crisp silence that feels less like peace and more like the pause before a storm. My wife, Anna, had come home after a 12-hour shift at the ER. She was asleep upstairs, and I was on the back porch with coffee in hand, staring at a yard I'd spent 2 years shaping into my version of calm. After 15 years hauling lumber and steel for other people's homes, I finally had one that felt like mine. We'd picked this small house on the edge of Red Hollow because it was simple, cheap, and, most importantly, outside the reach of the local Homeowners Association. 5 blocks made the difference between freedom and paperwork. I'd checked everything before signing. Plat maps, county lines, even paid a lawyer to verify it. No HOA dues. No warning letters about paint shades, no committees voting on what color your shutters should be. It felt like breathing clean air. I wasn't the sort who liked confrontation. I kept to myself, did my work, paid my taxes. If my grass ever leaned wild, it was only because I was building someone else's patio, not trimming my own. That's why the first envelope felt so absurd. Plain white, taped to the mailbox, no stamp, no logo, just a resident in uneven black ink. Inside was a printed notice from something calling itself the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. They accused me of a non-compliant perimeter stain and unauthorized mailbox placement. I actually laughed out loud. My fence was older than the asphalt out front, and the mailbox hadn't moved since the late 90s. More importantly, our property wasn't under their jurisdiction. I tossed the letter onto the counter and forgot about it, figuring some intern had mixed up addresses. But 2 mornings later, a second note appeared, laminated, stuck right onto the gate like a parking ticket. This one read, "Failure to comply will result in escalating penalties." The phrasing was colder this time, clipped and deliberate. Anna suggested maybe they confuse our lot with one of the new houses uphill. So I called their office number listed at the bottom. The woman who answered sounded like she'd been trained to ignore logic. When I explained that our parcel wasn't listed in their jurisdiction, she calmly told me that territorial adjustments had recently been approved. Her tone had that smooth indifference you hear from people who don't need to be right. They just need to win. I asked for documentation. She promised to note my request and ended the call. 2 mornings later, I found a laminated citation pinned under a rock on the driveway, an $850 fine for visual disharmony due to non-standard architectural fixtures. The fixture in question? A copper rain chain I'd installed last summer. Apparently, it offended their aesthetic cohesion. That was the moment the amusement drained out of me. I started a file. Dates, letters, photographs, county records. Everything. Then I took it to my lawyer, a calm man named Briggs. He skimmed the papers, smirked, and said, "They are bluffing, trying to annex you by intimidation. It happens more often than you'd think. But they picked the wrong craftsman." Within a week, Briggs filed a civil harassment claim. 3 weeks later, we were standing in a county courtroom so quiet you could hear the pages turn. Briggs laid out the evidence, deed, plat map, boundary affidavits, and by the time he finished, even the judge looked irritated. 10 minutes later, gavel down, case closed. We won. The so-called Maple Ridge HOA was ordered to pay $45,000 in damages and issue a formal apology for overreach. Briggs shook my hand outside the courthouse and said, "Celebrate, but stay cautious. Some of these folks don't take losing well. Install cameras. Real ones. Hidden." I followed his advice the next morning. 2 trail cams in the trees, one near the mailbox, another built into the porch light. Not paranoia, just insurance. For a while, life slipped back into its easy rhythm. No more letters. No phone calls. Just work, coffee, and the gentle hum of ordinary peace. But peace, I've learned, never lasts long in neighborhoods where control is a hobby. For nearly a month, quiet held its ground. No more envelopes, no phone calls, nothing but the soft rhythm of days returning to normal. Anna even joked one night that maybe they'd finally found someone else to bother. I wanted to believe her. But on that Sunday morning, the air outside carried that same suspicious calm I'd felt the first day this started. Anna was sleeping off another night shift, and I was planning breakfast when I realized we were out of eggs. Just a small errand, 10 minutes at most. I grabbed my keys, stepped into the sunlight, and filled my lungs with air that smelled of dust and cedar. For a moment, it reminded me of my father's farm, quiet mornings when nothing bad had ever happened yet. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked to the gate and hit the button on my key fob. That's when I saw them. 2 men stood just beyond the fence line. Black tactical uniforms, silver badges gleaming, radios clipped to their shoulders. They looked less like security guards and more like muscle hide to intimidate. One was tall, broad frame, squared jaw, buzz cut sharp enough to draw blood. The other was smaller, shifting his weight like he didn't want to be there. The tall one stepped forward, his name tag flashing in the light. Doyle. "Mr. Reed?" he asked. "That's me," I said, cautious but steady. He handed me an envelope sealed with red wax, the kind of thing you'd expect in a courtroom drama. Not your driveway. Inside was a printed letter demanding that I issue a written apology to one Susan Hale, former president of the Maple Ridge HOA, for psychological harm and humiliation resulting from hostile litigation. They also wanted a voluntary restitution payment of $7,500 to aid her recovery. I stared at the paper, then at them. "You're serious?" "She's still recovering," Doyle said flatly. "You embarrass her publicly." "She embarrassed herself," I answered. All I did was tell the truth. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, loyalty, maybe both. "We've been here since 3 this morning," he said. She wanted this handled quietly. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Standing outside my fence in matching uniforms isn't quiet. I handed the envelope back. "Tell Susan she can frame this next to the court order she lost." He didn't take it. His jaw locked tight. The smaller one looked uneasy, glancing between us. "We just wanted to end this without escalation," he muttered. "Then you should have mailed the card," I said, turning toward my truck. The hit came before I even reached the door handle. A blunt explosion against the back of my skull sent light bursting behind my eyes. I staggered forward, caught myself on the mirror, turned, just in time to see Doyle's fist coming again. The second blow caught my jaw. Metal and blood filled my mouth. Sound shrank into a ringing hum. The shorter man lunged next, knee driving hard into my ribs. Pain shot through my side, cold and bright. I tried to swing back, but balance vanished. Another hit to my gut dropped me. Gravel bit my face as I went down. Somewhere above me, boots shifted, voices hissed. "Stop," one said. "Finish," the other replied. I stayed still, breath shallow, pretending the world had gone black. Something heavy cracked against the truck's windshield. Once, twice. Then, silence. After a few seconds, doors slammed, tires scraped against gravel, and the sound faded down the road. When I finally moved, the world was tilted sideways. Blood trickled down my cheek, pooling near my ear. Every inhale felt like knives. Somewhere in the haze, one thought cut through. The cameras. I crawled, half across the path, half through the wet grass, until my hands hit the porch steps. Fingers raw, palms bleeding. I pulled myself inside and reached the monitor. The screen glowed dim blue. Footage still rolling. I scrubbed back through the timeline. 3:07 a.m., 2 silhouettes waiting by the gate. 6 hours. They never moved. 9:47 a.m., I appeared. 9:50 a.m., the first punch landed. Watching it didn't feel real, like watching someone else being beaten. Seeing your own body crumple on screen does something to your brain. It separates you from yourself. I sat there trembling, blood drying on my hands, and dialed 911. "Emergency dispatch, what's your situation?" My voice came out cracked. 2 men assaulted me outside my house. "They're gone. I've got footage." "Stay seated, sir," the operator said, voice smooth and distant. "Help is on the way." I don't remember hanging up. Just the echo of sirens growing nearer and Anna's voice calling my name. Sharp, panicked, as she ran barefoot across the yard. At the hospital, they told me I had 4 cracked ribs, a concussion, and a bruised kidney. Could have been worse, they said. I didn't find comfort in that. Anna sat beside me, tracing the edge of a bandage on my arm. She didn't speak for a long time, then whispered, "They were still there when I found you." The next morning, 2 detectives came. Detective Reed and his partner, a quiet woman named Alvarez. Reed flipped open his notebook. "We've reviewed your footage," he said. "It's clear as day." Those 2 waited over 6 hours. Both men work for a security firm under contract with the Maple Ridge HOA. The tall one, Doyle, has prior assault complaints. The other, James Riley, clean record but fully complicit. "Will they be arrested?" I asked. "They already were," he said. "No bail. That footage probably saved your life." When they left, Anna squeezed my hand. "You see," she said softly, "Briggs was right. He knew they'd try something." I didn't answer. The painkillers dulled the ache, but not the anger rising underneath. 6 days later, they released me. The house looked the same, but the silence weighed heavier now. Anna took time off work to stay home. She filled the rooms with quiet music, laughter from old sitcoms, anything that made the place sound normal. But every night, before we went to bed, I caught her glancing at the live camera feed. And I couldn't blame her. Once violence steps onto your driveway, peace never sounds the same again. 3 weeks passed before the bruises on my ribs stopped burning every time I breathed. By then, our story had already spread farther than I ever wanted it to. It started with a local news segment, a 30-second piece titled "Homeowner Assaulted in HOA Dispute." Then another outlet ran it. Then another. By the weekend, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Neighbors who'd never waved before suddenly dropped off casseroles and sympathy cards. They spoke in low voices, like the driveway itself might be listening. Every single one of them had their own version of a story: late-night letters, surprise fees, intimidation visits, veiled threats about community standards. It was as if my beating had cracked open a dam that had been waiting years to burst. Detective Reed called the following Monday. "We've got something," he said. "Might want to sit down for this." He showed up that evening with a laptop and a folder so thick it could have been a phone book. Inside were invoices, emails, and scanned letters, all connecting back to the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. But not just them. Their security firm, Silverline Protection, was owned by Susan Hale's brother-in-law. Money flowed both ways. HOA funds paid to Silverline for community safety, and kickbacks routed back through a shell company named Maple Consults LLC. It wasn't neighborhood management. It was organized extortion dressed up in paperwork. Reed's voice stayed steady as he laid it out, but there was anger in his eyes. "We've seen HOAs overstep before," he said, "but not like this. They built a miniature government with zero oversight. You didn't just sue them, you punctured their entire operation." The realization hit me like another punch. They hadn't attacked me because I'd humiliated them. They attacked me because I'd exposed the revenue stream that kept them powerful. Within a week, search warrants went out. Computers, phones, meeting minutes, all seized. 6 board members were questioned, including Susan Hale herself. She refused to comment, but cameras caught her leaving the police station with a lawyer's hand gripping her arm. Online, the story had already gone viral. Clips of my security footage circulated with captions like "HOA Thugs Attack Veteran Homeowner." I hated that title, not because it wasn't true, but because it turned something deeply personal into a headline. The court date arrived sooner than expected. I hadn't wanted to face them again, but Anna insisted we show up. When we walked into the courthouse, the hallway smelled of floor polish and nerves. Across the aisle, Susan sat rigid, eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. Doyle and Riley weren't there. They'd taken plea deals. The prosecutor opened with the footage, grainy but undeniable. The judge watched in silence, hands steepled under her chin. Then came the financial records, the fake invoices, the shell companies. Every layer peeled away like rotten wallpaper. When it was over, the room was so still I could hear the tick of the wall clock. The judge looked directly at Susan. "You turned a civic association into a private enforcement racket," she said. "You weaponized fear against your own neighbors. This court will not tolerate that." She ruled for a total dissolution of the Maple Ridge HOA, seizure of its accounts, and restitution to all residents affected by illegal assessments. Susan received a suspended sentence but permanent ban from holding any HOA position in the state. Silverline Protection lost its license within 48 hours. Outside the courthouse, microphones waited. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing. I said only one thing. I didn't win anything today. We just stopped losing. Anna slipped her arm through mine as we pushed past the crowd. For the first time in months, her smile reached her eyes. But peace wasn't instant. You don't turn off paranoia like a light switch. I still caught myself checking the cameras twice before bed, scanning the tree line when headlights slowed near our driveway. Even when things were fine, the silence felt suspicious. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Reed called again. "Just wanted you to know," he said, "the DA's filing new charges, tax fraud, embezzlement, the works. They're going away for a while." "Good," I said. "Maybe now the rest of us can breathe." He chuckled softly. "Careful, Reed. You might end up the poster child for HOA reform." "I'll pass," I told him. One headline was enough. After we hung up, I stood on the porch, watching the lights fade across the valley. Anna joined me, her hand warm against mine. "You think they'll leave us alone now?" she asked. "I think," I said, "they finally know who they are dealing with." The wind moved through the trees, soft and dry, carrying away months of tension. Somewhere down the hill, the last Maple Ridge sign still clung to its post. The words "community rules keep us safe" now faded and cracked. For a moment, I almost pitied them. Almost. 6 months passed before I could drive down the hill without glancing at the rearview mirror. The bruises faded, the headlines disappeared, and Maple Ridge HOA became another entry in the county's list of dissolved organizations. Life, at least on paper, had gone back to normal, but normal never quite felt the same again. I went back to my job repairing solar grids for the county. Anna returned to her night shifts at the clinic. We planted tomatoes that spring, painted the porch railings, and pretended the air didn't still hum with leftover static. Most evenings ended quietly, a movie, tea, a shared silence we both understood. Sometimes, though, I'd wait before dawn and step outside. The world would still be wrapped in that gray light between night and morning, the valley hidden beneath a thin layer of mist. I'd stand there barefoot, listening, waiting for something I couldn't name. And every time, I'd tell myself it was just wind, not the echo of boots on gravel. One night in July, a county maintenance crew came to remove the old Maple Ridge signs. Their flashlights moved like fireflies across the dark. I watched from the porch as they unbolted each rusted post and tossed it into the truck bed. When the last sign came down, one of the workers called out, "Guess this street finally belongs to itself again." He laughed, and they drove away. But I kept staring at the empty patch of dirt where the sign had stood. It looked strange, naked, unfinished, as if erasing the name hadn't quite erased its memory. A week later, a letter arrived in our mailbox. No seal, no return address. Inside was a single line typed in bold. "Communities need order. Order needs watchers." I didn't show it to Anna. I burned it in the sink and watched the paper curl into black threads of ash. Still, that night, I checked the cameras twice. By August, a real estate company had begun buying up nearby lots. New construction permits, fresh fences, survey markers, the whole process repeating itself like a song I already knew the ending to. One afternoon, I asked the foreman what the development was called. He smiled and said, "Haven Meadows, Future Managed Community." Managed. That single word turned my stomach. I nodded, said nothing, and drove home. That evening, as the sun set behind the ridgeline, Anna joined me on the porch. The light was soft, orange bleeding into violet. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "You're quiet," she said. "Just thinking," I replied. "About them." "About what replaces them." She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "You think it ever really ends?" I looked out across the valley, at the fresh stakes marking new property lines, at the shadows where our fence met the trees. "Power doesn't disappear," I said finally. "It just changes uniforms." The crickets started their nightly song. Far off, a truck engine echoed through the hills, then faded. The world seemed peaceful again, but peace, I'd learned, was just a quiet space between letters. Anna reached for my hand. "Then we hold on to what's ours," she said. I squeezed her fingers gently, until they come for it again. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and dust. Somewhere beyond the darkness, a hammer struck metal, the first frame of Haven Meadows rising in the distance. And I realized that freedom, like land, was never truly owned, only rented until someone stronger decided otherwise.